Dave, how could someone justify ranking Justin Fields ahead of Lamar Jackson, which you do by one spot? And I kind of want to be there because I'm a little frustrated with Lamar Jackson. But if you just think of them, their profiles, it's almost like you're just hoping Fields becomes him. So justify ranking Fields ahead of Jackson.
I think he might end up being a better passer. I think his numbers might be better in that area. And I think his rushing will be as good, if not maybe even a little bit better than Lamar's. Both of these teams, the Bears and the Ravens, want to protect their quarterback. And they're making changes to their offenses so that their quarterbacks don't run all over the place. I think the Ravens are a lot more defined based on what they've done this offseason. They've replenished their receiving core. On paper, the receiving core looks like a lot of fun, man. Rashad Bateman's back, but he had a cortisone shot in his foot. Odell's there, but he's not the same Odell that he once was. Zay Flowers is an exciting rookie. I loved him at Boston College. Not sure he's going to translate right away to the NFL game. And so if those guys can't come through for Lamar, and Lamar's asked to run a little bit less, well, first of all, that should be really good for Mark Andrews. He's an easy call as tight end too. But I wonder if that just kind of sabotages his numbers a little bit because he won't run like we're used to or that we want to see him run on a game-to-game basis. And I also happen to think that they still love J.K. Dobbins. And the reports on him this offseason have been mostly great. So I wonder if they're going to get him a little bit more involved in this up-tempo offense a little bit. And if that receiving core scares defensive coordinators, it's going to be light boxes. And that's great for a guy who was like number 1 or number 2 in rushing efficiency last year.
Heath, I'll let you talk about that too. You have Jackson ahead of Justin Fields, 4 and 5. One thing I love about Lamar Jackson, in the last 2 seasons, he has ranked first and second in fantasy points on yards alone per game. Really cool stat there. So, he just needs more touchdowns. But you stuck with Jackson ahead of Justin Fields. And we have a lot of comments about Jackson here. I mean, some people, Lamar's an injury risk. I
think that's true. Like I love Lamar, and I still think he's an injury risk. I just don't, and I wouldn't necessarily.
So is Fields. If you're going to say it about one, say it about the other.
Yeah, and I think Josh Allen's is an injury risk. I think Jalen Hurts is an injury risk. Like Josh Allen got hurt last year, I guess, but it was I guess
Hurts did too.
So did Mahomes, by the way. And I feel like Mahomes, he did in the playoffs, but I feel like Mahomes has missed more games, than Allen. Like for sure. Right?
Probably so, but as we saw with Josh Allen last year, playing through it doesn't necessarily mean being the same guy.
Yeah.
So I think it's good that he played through it, but we saw that with Cam Newton. I hate to keep bringing up Cam Newton when talking about Josh Allen, but this is about the time in Cam Newton's career where things started to crumble. When he played through a lot of injuries poorly and got roasted for his performance.
I think these teams are trying to avoid that, though.
You did get a little off track. That's okay.
I think my only concern about Lamar is the injuries. I think if he's healthy, between Bateman and Flowers and maybe a little bit of Beckham, the receiving core and of course Mark Andrews is the best by far he's ever had. He will put up not probably his best passing season because I think we forget about how good he was as a passer in 2019. He's probably not going to have a 9% touchdown rate ever again. But I do think a very good passing season this year if he stays healthy.
I don't know. I don't want to just say that he's going to be inconsistent on a week-to-week basis, but it's been 2 years in a row.
Well, but that is also, you just have to decide if you think that the lack of touchdowns over the last 2 years, after 2 or 3 years of pretty high touchdown rates, if that's just like he's lost the ability to get into the end zone, or if that has something to do with the weapons that were around him.
Yeah.
And a little bit of maybe of bad luck. Because you're right. And I generally buy into the yards more than I do the touchdowns, especially from a guy who has produced an insane touchdown rate in the past.
Right. I didn't even look at 4 years ago when he won the MVP, but in the last 3 years, the quarterbacks, there have been 4 quarterbacks who have been standouts basically every year in terms of just fantasy points based on just yards alone on a per game basis. And they were Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and a guy that has no chance of being discussed today other than this note, Kyler Murray. Those guys get a lot of fantasy points on yards alone.
And like Kyler's a different case, I think, than Lamar when it comes to passing touchdown rate, because outside of having DeAndre Hopkins, he's never been good in that regard.
It's true.
Lamar had a couple of years where he was insane, and then a couple of years where he was awful, and it went in the opposite order than it's supposed to.